Welcome to Start Building Your Best BDC. I'm Ashley Mayberry. I'm the Retail Performance Manager at ZMOT Auto. We're part of the Cardinale Automotive Group. We have 19 stores, mostly in California. We have a few in Arizona and then a couple in Nevada. And I've been building internet and BDC departments for over 10 years. I've been blessed in the last 12 months to do this and assist dealers across the US, Canada, and Mexico, helping their internet and BDC teams move just a little bit faster and help them generate some more revenue. And I'm really excited to be here. BDC is one of my favorite things to talk about. So let's just jump into it. So why should we have a BDC? What are some of the reasons that some of you guys have BDCs? Don't make me pick on you. Come on. Huh? Controlling the call? Yeah? Anybody else? What are the reasons that we have BDCs? Or why you want to start one, or why you even came to this session?
Bring in more business.
Bring in more business, okay. So those are all good answers. And there's a lot of purposes for a BDC. There's a lot of reasons that we do it. But I would challenge that really the reason that we have a BDC is revenue generation, right? We want to bring in more money to the business. And it may seem odd coming from me, since I'm here to talk about BDCs, but most stores probably shouldn't have one. Some of you in this room probably shouldn't have one. And I'm going to go into that and tell you why, but it really all goes back to revenue generation. Most of the time a BDC fails because we start them for the wrong reasons. To be profitable, a BDC really needs to add and not replace. Does this look familiar to you? Your BDC person is focused. They might even be overwhelmed. And this is your floor sales guy. So if that looks like your sales floor, then you're probably not ready for a BDC. And if the reason that you're building a BDC is I can't get my sales guys to make phone calls. Can't get the guys to make phone calls, so we better hire somebody to do it. Don't do it. All you're going to do is add an expense to every car that you sell, and you're probably not going to get any more incremental sales, right? And actually, it can actually make your sales staff worse, right? Because what's going to happen is they're just going to wait for the BDC appointment bus to arrive. Great, they hired somebody to do all the things I don't want to do. I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to wait for those BDC appointments to come in, because that's the culture in your store already, right? They're already not disciplined. So I would say that if your staff is performing at a high level and they're at a maximum capacity, that's when you're ready to start adding in that next layer of BDC, right? We all know that more contacts, more attempts to contact the client equals more appointments, and that's going to equal more sales. But if you don't have a sales staff that's making those phone calls already, then you need to start there first. And then when you are ready to take it to the next level, that's when we're going to add in a BDC. So if I haven't already discouraged you from doing one and you still want to stay in the room, let's see what that really looks like, okay? So at our stores, an internet salesperson is required to make 65 minimum outbound attempts per day and to hold a 15% closing ratio. If you can't do that, if you can't keep a 15% closing ratio over a 90-day rolling average, you lose the privilege to receive my internet buyers. Right? Because that's where I'm investing my dollars, and at our stores, we don't do any traditional media. We spend everything 100% on digital, and so I'm investing all of my dollars there. If you can't give me a return on my investment, then you lose that privilege.
Are your ratios based upon total leads or good leads?
What would be considered a bad lead for you?
Duplicate and or no contact info.
So we merge duplicates. So it would be excluding those duplicates. And I will take out, if it's 100% no contact information, I will take that out, right? Or if it's all bad. But with the way that we target consumers, and this is not a pitch, I'm trying to just answer your question very carefully here. But the way that we target consumers, we do not do any third party, and we tend to have a higher quality consumer coming in through our site. Because of the things that we do, and I'm happy to talk about that outside of the room with any of you. So we don't get a lot of that, right? But we do sometimes get duplicates, people who are going on multiple times, and those we will merge them, and so it would be excluding that.
So your ratios, just so that, because we're going through these are
Yeah.
based upon all, these are all filtered already. Your ratios.
It would be filtered. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sports editions, or do they include phone calls as well?
This does not include phone calls. Go ahead.
Close ratio would be an appointment, not a sold.
No, a sold. Sold. Yeah. So if I give you 100 opportunities as a salesperson, I need to see 15% of that back, right? Now, a total outbound attempt, the reason we don't call them phone calls is because an attempt to me is that you called every single available number, you sent a text opt-in, or you sent a text message to that consumer, and we sent an email every single time, right? So I require that. Of course, if you don't have a phone number, I get it, you can only send an email, but whenever there's an availability of a contact with them, we need to maximize that attempt, right? So if you can't keep a 65 minimum outbound average per day, and you can't give me this closing percentage, you're not in my department, right? For our floor sales, we require for them to make 10 3-minute phone conversations a day. They have to have 10 3-minute phone conversations a day, and they must set me 2 appointments. And I'm looking for those appointments throughout the day. We talk to them in the morning, set up the expectation. We talk to them several times throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I want to see the results, right? So when you're at a volume like this, and they're selling cars and their time is maxed out, that's when we want to start adding in that extra layer of follow-up, right? Now, some of you may already have a BDC and a sales department, and you might have this culture where your salespeople are not making calls, right? And the only way that I would, and I want to be careful, but the only way that I would really justify you adding a BDC or call center to an underperforming or a non-performing sales staff is if the payment of the BDC agent comes directly off of the top of the salesperson's commission, it's a split deal. And I don't pay that BDC person any kind of base pay so that I'm not adding any expense. So if you're not willing to make phone calls and you're not willing to generate your own business as a salesperson, then when you get that business from the BDC person, you're going to split the deal with them, period, right? Because I'm not going to pay 2 people to do 1 job. That usually will start to get your staff to generate their own appointments, right?
So you say that to underperforming salespeople don't get this done? Is that what you're saying? Or that's the pay point?
Well, I'm trying to appeal to the people in the room who may already be in this position, right? There's some people who may not have started a BDC yet, and if you haven't, then that's a different conversation. But if you're already in a position where you have a BDC, and you have it staffed, and you have a manager, and you have a sales department, and you're in that culture of my BDC people make calls and my sales people don't, this is a good transitional, right, until you can get them up to a different level. So the structure of the department can be really tricky, and you may not know how many people that you need. You might be worried about the cost of adding all of the people that you need. And I can tell you that if you understaff your department, you will have diminishing returns, right? It's so important to staff accordingly. There's a lot of different things that a BDC does, right, or that they can do, and the staff size and the process and the structure of the department is going to depend on what you really plan to do with that department. Make sure that you have a clear goal set. What's the reason that you're actually going to start this, or if you've already started it, what's their number 1 priority, right? Is it more volume? Is it we want to increase our gross? Is it lease retention? Is it service business, right? Have one main objective, and then you can move on from there. They can handle a lot of different things, right? It can be really overwhelming. We can do internet leads, we can do phone, we can do lease retention, we can do service business, CSI calls, unsold showroom traffic. Don't try to start every single thing at once. Get really good at one thing. Start with what's your number 1 priority. Get really good at that, and then start to build slowly, right? So don't get one BDC person and say, hey, we're going to have you do internet leads. The phones are going to be coming in. Then I'm going to have you call unsold showroom traffic. And on your off time, you're going to take service calls. And then at the end of the day, I want you to make calls on all the sold deals and do CSI. That is a recipe for disaster. You're setting that person up to fail, right? Your priority goal is going to help you determine what to start with. Really crawl, walk, run, right? I thought this quote was appropriate since it was Martin Luther King holiday just a few days ago. The other thing is you really want to specialize your agents, right? We want to give them one opportunity type and help them to become an expert. It's important that during the day they can really hone in on one type of call, you're going to get certain objections from one customer type. If you have them making so many different types of calls, it's really difficult for them to switch their brain from this type of scripting, these types of word tracks, to the other, and then back and forth. It's difficult for them. They can be much more effective if you have them specialized, especially if you have a bigger department. You want to have some agents that are doing internet, some agents that are doing unsold showroom traffic, some agents that are doing lease retention, right? So make sure that you're specializing them. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't cross-train your people. You should absolutely cross-train them. Once they get really good and they master one thing, you want to start cross-training them so that you don't have to do reactive hiring, right? If you, for some reason, lose an agent, you want to be able to plug that person in to another spot. And then you're also growing your next team leaders, or maybe even your predecessor if you're a BDC manager. Or if you're not a BDC manager, if your BDC manager leaves you, you have somebody who you can fill into that position if they're ready, and try to create that culture and grow people from the ground up. So how many opportunities should somebody get, right? And if you're just starting a department, I have to tell you, my rule is that you have to at least have 2 people, okay? We want to, in all my stores, we want them to have an A/B shift, right? So that we have complete coverage. We want an all the time process. We don't want to when Melissa's on shift process, right? So when the one BDC person's working, here's what the process is. And then when she's off on 2 days or when she takes a vacation, it's a different process and we're going to just let the salespeople do whatever they want to do, right? So we need to have consistency. Consistency in your process is how you're going to be able to manage and measure your results and make sure that they're actually working. If you're doing something different every single time, how do you know if it works or not? So you need to have a consistency there. So 2 people minimum, A/B shift. And the only time that you'll have an issue with that is the occasional lunch when the other person is off, right? And that's where you're going to have your managers and your BDC manager, if you have one, really fill in until you can start to grow that department when you can have all the time coverage, right? You also need to be aware of the volume of opportunities that you're giving them. If you overwhelm them, you're going to just be bleeding out all of your opportunities, right? And it's often, this is mostly talked about with internet sales. And so going back to our earlier conversation about adding and not replacing, I don't believe that you replace internet salespeople or internet staff with BDC people, okay? They need to work together. It's a team. We're going to get double the contacts on this person, right? So if you put one person in your internet BDC department and you shove 300 leads at them, or even 2 people, you better hope those people are rock stars, because you just put 100% of your investment funneled into 2 people. And if they're not any good, what are you going to do, right? So they need to work as a team together. A BDC person is an assistant. They're an executive assistant to the internet sales manager. They're going to edify that person. They're going to set them up, and you can really work together. You can get them to work together as a team, and it can be much more effective. Because we're going to work them with 2 people, your BDC people should be able to handle up to 150 opportunities per month, right? If you have it, this is way too much if you decide not to have your internet salespeople with the BDC person. That's way too much for one person to handle. You need to go back down to somewhere around 50 or 60. Don't recommend that, but don't give them 150 leads if they're the only person that's handling it. So let's talk about hiring. Hiring is where it really all starts. A great hiring and onboarding process is critical, and it's really the difference between an okay department and a department that dominates, right? And I have a really stringent hiring process whenever I hire for a BDC. So one thing that I get all the time is, where do I look for BDC people, right? And you really should be creative. You know, I personally don't usually hire people who come from the car business. I like to hire outside of the car business. Honestly, some of the best people that I've had to come work for me were people who worked at high-end retailers, right? Nordstrom, Saks. One time I hired a guy that sold me my TV at Fry's. You know, have your eyes open. When you're out and you're interacting with people, if they're enthusiastic and they have a smile and they have great customer service and they have great skills, that's somebody who maybe you want to look at. It might not be the right person, but you're going to put them through your process and you're going to know if they're right at the end. But keep your eyes open, be creative, look at social media. You know, don't limit yourself to just posting an ad on Craigslist, right? You need to always be recruiting. And actually that guy that sold me the TV at Fry's, he ended up taking over the department. He ended up being the #1 person in my department for several years, and he took over the department for me when I left. And I hear that they're still doing really well. We talk a lot. And one of the things I want to talk about with hiring, when we think about BDC, traditionally we think about women, right? And I think that even strangely enough, in this one department, I think that sometimes we're even a little bit biased towards hiring women for the BDC. Like, we think that she'll be good at that because women love to talk, right? Right? I mean, but boys are great at it too, right? So don't limit yourself to thinking that you need to have an all-female staff, or, you know, when you have a guy come in, you're like, why would he want to be in the BDC? You know, if he was a real guy, he'd just sell cars. Right? If you're a real man, you'd be on the floor. No, they can be really great at it too. And actually, some of the best people who I've had work for me in BDCs are men. So diversify, right? Because not every client is going to respond the same way to just one type of person. If you have only one person, the same carbon copy of a person in your department, you have no diversity, right? So you're going to miss out on opportunities. So one of the things that we do in all of our stores is an assessment test, right? I don't know how many of you, is anybody using assessment tests in their stores right now? Okay. So I would really highly recommend it. We happen to use what's called a DISC assessment. And it looks at 4 different places: dominance, influence, compliance, and steadiness, right? And whatever one that you're on or that you decide to get on, it'll explain to you the different things, but I'll tell you what I look for in our test is I'm going to look for somebody that has a high compliance, right? Because I want them to do processes and I want them to be able to follow processes, right? It's kind of counterintuitive. As sales people and as car people, I know particularly myself, when I first started looking at assessment testing, I wanted like the most dominant person out there, right? I'm like, dominance, that's what sells cars. I'm a dominant person, right? I'm a high D. And that's what I looked for, right? Is, I want that high D person. But really, usually that person, you'll see the D goes up and the C goes down, and then they don't want to do what you're telling them to do, right? So I look for a high compliance in all new people. I want to see that they can follow processes. But then I also look for an influencer. So the I is for influence. I look for somebody who can be really compelling and is going to follow my processes, but has that natural ability to be persuasive, right? The insights from these testing is really invaluable. I can tell you that every time I've made a decision against the test, I have 100% regretted it, right? Because I make up all these things in my mind. Yeah, I know that it said this, but when I talked to them, right, they convinced me. You know, I asked them, are you going to comply? They're like, yeah, I'm going to comply. They don't, right? They don't. So, you know, hire by the personality, hire for the things that you cannot train on, and then train them on the skills that you have and that you know are best, and train them on the processes that are best, right? Leverage people by the processes. Don't worry about hiring superstars, because 1, superstars are expensive, and 2, they'll leave you, right? So look at hiring more if you can hire average people and have an outstanding process, you can leverage average people to give you a great, outstanding result just by having a good process in place, okay? The next thing is the phone interview, right? That's the first thing that I do. So if I like their disc, I'll move them onto a phone interview. And this should be no less than an hour, okay? Do not have a phone interview, talk to them for 15 minutes and say, yeah, that person seemed nice. Cool, well, we'll bring them in here. These people are going to be spending the majority of their time on the phone. You need to know what they sound like on the phone. You need to get to know them, right? You want to hear what they sound like. And this is where one of my pet peeves is schedule a time, right? Schedule a time for them to come in or to have the phone interview. Don't call them and expect them to drop everything. They're at the grocery store and you're like, I'm going to talk to this person for an hour. They're not prepared to talk to you, right? Don't do that to them. I can tell you right now that if you call me unannounced and expect for me to talk to you for an hour, I pretty much know what I'm getting when I come to work for you, right? No respect. Respect your people, right? Respect the people who are looking at you as a potential opportunity because they're interviewing you too. So you need to treat them the way that you would want to be treated, right? Because if you don't, you're going to get the people who don't care how they're treated. And those are usually not the best employees, okay? The next thing is if I like them on the phone, I'm going to call them back, and typically I'll do all of my phone interviews, and I'll call them back. I don't usually make a gut decision right then. Do a scoring card, I write down notes, and then I like to go back to it and review the conversation later and see if I still feel the same way, and see if my notes say something different than what my emotions feel, right? So making a logical decision versus an emotional decision. If I do like them, then I'll move them on to a face-to-face interview. And I may have another manager involved at this point. Make sure that you take your time. I would do another minimum hour. It seems like a lot, right? 2 hours, and we're like not even hiring this person yet. But you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person, right? And your customers are going to be spending a lot of time with this person. You really want to make sure that they're right. If they go through the face-to-face interview and I still like them, I have one more thing that I do with them. I do what's called an ability test, right? I want to see if they have the ingenuity, right? If they have the ability. And there's basically 2 forms of this. First, I call to let them know that they're being considered for the next phase. I will tell them that I will be emailing them with some information, usually info about the interview, but then I also will send them a mock email from a client, right, asking about something. I'm not trying to make it hard. And these are people who probably have never been in the dealer, so keep that in mind. And I will give them an attachment of a perfect example phone call of somebody taking a phone call, right? Recording from one of my top reps. I will ask them to listen to that phone call. I will also send them a script, short, brief script, for them to review overnight before our interview, right? I ask them when they receive my mock email to please email me back as they would if they were working at the dealership to try to get an appointment with me. What am I looking for here? Am I looking for them to be like a hardcore salesperson and I'm just going to be blown away by their email? I'm looking, can they spell? Can they make a complete sentence, right? Are they going to totally embarrass us? Do they have customer service skills, right? If I see something in there that's just horrible because they're trying to put their best foot forward at this point, then they're probably not going to make it to the next round, right? But if the punctuation is where it needs to be, the grammar is where it needs to be, the sentence structure is good, it doesn't matter if they don't say all the right things because you're going to tell them what they can say, right? You're going to tell them the right way to do it. When they come in, I then do 2 role play phone calls with them. I will set them in a room. I'll sit in the other room and I'll dial into the extension of the room that they're in, and I'll be the customer, and they should use the script to try to set an appointment with me. Now, if I make it very easy, right? I'm not trying to make it difficult on them. They're not trained yet, but what I'm looking for is, do they have enthusiasm, right? Do they have ingenuity? Are they adaptable? Does it just make them nervous out of their minds, right? And so if I like them past that, then we will hire them. They're not technically hired. They go through a probation period of 90 days. In that 90 days, we do a lot of training. We also do testing. So at the end of the 90 days, I give them a product knowledge test that if they cannot pass it, then they cannot be hired with me, right? 90 days is plenty enough time. I give them, the one thing about this is it may sound very harsh, but it's really your responsibility. If I have somebody fail out of my probation period, what did I do to fail? How did I not train them right? Right? So take responsibility first. You need to be dedicated to spending the time to onboarding this person, but they also need to put in the effort and the time, and they need to have the ability to be able to be successful, right? Because if they can't do this by 90 days, then I'm not doing them any favors by keeping them on, because they're probably in the wrong place as well, right? So we need to, sometimes I repurpose them, right? There might be a different position. You know that you've known them for a couple months now. There might be a different position in the store that they're better suited for. Or sometimes we just have to part ways, but we need to make sure that the people who are making it through and being in our department are outstanding. The other thing is that I do reviews. So reviews are critical. Consistent feedback to your staff is one of the best ways to help them improve and let them know that you care about them. People want feedback. They want to know, what can I do better? Am I doing a bad job? Am I doing a good job? If I am, what parts of it are good? And not everybody's looking for a pat on the back. Most people are looking for, how can I get better? Everybody wants to be good at their job. I don't think that I've ever had anybody working for me that I thought, that guy just doesn't care. He doesn't care to be great. Everybody wants to be good at their job, but some people just don't know how, and it's our job as leaders to show them how to be great, right? So I perform these quarterly to agents on their start date. So every quarter since the day that they start, we have a quarterly review. And then every agent in the department has an end of the year review in January to go over what we accomplished from the prior year and what our goals are going to be for 2016, both as a department and then also as individuals, right? One of the nice things that I had my managers do is write me an email with a couple attaboys about that particular BDC person, and I would put them at the bottom of their review. It just shows them that not only do you care about them, but also the sales managers care about them, and that we're all a team, and that everybody recognizes their efforts, right? It's a great morale booster, and you know, if your people think that you care about them, then they're going to care about you. So BDC managers are the most important position in the department, right? Make sure this person answers to the general manager. Don't cut the knees off of your BDC manager, because they have invaluable insights. They're a lot of times one of the smartest people in the room, right? They're the person who most of the time knows how to use the CRM, so you need them. And you need to make sure that they have all the authority that they need to make the decisions in their department and are part of the discussions that you guys are having about the sales departments and where we're moving the sales departments forward, right? Because they're a big part of that, and they need to be included and involved, and you need to listen to their ideas, right? So make sure that you're empowering them. When you're looking for a BDC manager, a good BDC manager is a leader first. If you have a great leader in that department, the morale will be up. You need to have somebody who is going to be positive. You want somebody who is competitive and can bring out the competitiveness in your agents. And you need somebody who is going to be wicked smart, right? So look for somebody who encompasses all of those things. They're going to be doing a lot of different things. They're going to be multitaskers. They need to be good at every single thing that your BDC agent is doing. There's nothing worse than when I go into a department and a BDC manager that can't make a phone call, can't do the script that they ask their BDC people to do, right? They don't know how to use the CRM. The BDC people the agents know how to use the CRM better than the manager, right? That's not okay. They need to be able to do everything that agent can do and better. Plus they need to have leadership skills. plus they need to have reporting skills, plus they need to be able to balance budgets. So make sure that you take your time looking for somebody, you know, but that's the best, that's the biggest thing in that department. It's a make or break it. So training is so important for your BDC. Don't train your BDC person for one day, and then don't train them again until the OEM comes out with a new product video. You know, then you sit them down for 2 days every year. Oh, do all your product videos, get those things done. You know, oh, you got to be on the phone? Don't worry, so-and-so has the answers to the product knowledge test in the desk at the reception office, right? How many times have we seen that? So you need to be training them all the time. Training has to be consistent, okay? Employees that receive consistent training feel more empowered and more confident, right? And they're going to perform better. When they feel like they don't know what they're doing, then they're doing a bad job, or they think that they're doing a bad job, they will leave you. They will find a leader that is going to invest in them and train them. Or worse, if they don't leave you, they're going to actively disengage from your business, and they're going to hurt you. And then they're going to start bringing down the people around them, and they're going to start bringing down your clients, right? And it's going to actively hurt you. It's actually better if they just leave you, okay? So make sure that you invest in the training. In the interest of time, I'm not going to walk you through all of the different trainings that I do, but we'll go through a couple of them here. I make sure to have weekly meetings with the entire staff. During these meetings, we do a lot of phone training. We listen to a lot of calls. We do a Hall of Fame and Hall of Shame of the last week. It's not meant to bring anybody down, right? But we want to listen to, what does an outstanding call sound like? What's a not so great call sound like? And I actually have the agents give suggestions of how the call could have been better, so it doesn't all come from me, right? So I'm not just standing on a podium saying, oh, do this, do this, do this, and they go blind. I have their fellow coworkers tell them, well, next time maybe you could try it this way. You know, oh, you missed getting the phone call, right? And that builds a team, because now they know that their coworkers are also expecting from them, you know, what the standard is, right? I also do a 1-minute manager with all of my employees. I start at the very beginning of the day. We set up what their objectives are going to be. We talk about any opportunities that they got from the day before. I let them know how many calls I expect them to have before my next meeting with them. And then I meet with them in the middle of the day, and then I'm going to meet with them at the end of the day, right? So in the middle of the day, are you on track? Do we need to have a course correction? Did you have a phone call that didn't go so good? Is there anybody I can call for you? Right? Is there anyone that you're working on? And then at the end of the day, did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Right? We do product knowledge training, you know, make sure that you're doing product knowledge training with them all the time. I think that one of the biggest things is that we try to keep our BDC people stupid. And why would you want to do that? Hire smart people who know how to use the knowledge that you give them. Don't hire people and then hold them back, right? Teach them to use the skills. Don't keep them stupid. A fun thing that we used to do is I used to let an agent take home a car for the weekend once a month. Had to always be something different, so you're always learning a new car. But one, they're so excited, and it's such a good morale booster, right? But the other thing about it is that they learn more from driving the car and touching the buttons and playing with it than watching a video will ever do for them, or anything that I tell them, or doing a walk around with them. Them being able to touch it and use it and hear what their friends have to say about it. I would hear them in conversations with clients telling them, oh yeah, I just drove that car last weekend and my girlfriend loved it. You know, the leather's awesome. And if they're excited about the product, it's going to come through on the phone to your people. If you invest in them, they will pay you back in tenfold, right? So let's talk about profit. How do we make all of this work, right? Because a lot of BDCs aren't profitable. We don't always measure them at all, right? We don't always measure the profitability of them at all. It's like, oh, sales are up, great. Sales are down, okay. Appointments are up, oh, right? But we're not really looking at the dollars and cents. So the first thing is measure everything. You need to make sure that you're measuring all of the metrics. And first and foremost, you need to have the tools, invest in the tools that you need to track and perform at a high level, okay? Make sure that you have a solid CRM tool. They need to have good headsets. They need to have fast working computers, a good Wi-Fi connection, right? Don't make them sit there 10 minutes waiting for a client to load. First of all, that's not good for you. They need to be able to make phone calls quickly, but it's also horrible for them. Why would you want to work at a place like that, right? Make sure that you can track how many calls and emails and text messages they're sending. And your CRM should be able to track all of your appointments, your shows, your solds, right? With time and date stamps that cannot be changed by BDC agents, right? And do not make them use an Excel spreadsheet that your BDC manager has to go through for 10 hours to do payroll every month, right? It's not good. Invest in the tools. I would say if you don't have a CRM that can do all of that, don't build a BDC, get a CRM, because it's going to pay you back in dividends, and then you'll be ready to get a BDC later. All right, so set your team up for success and give them the opportunity to rise to the standards that you're trying to set for them, okay? Appointment guidelines and policies. People will either work to your standard or they'll work to their own. So if you don't set the standard and they don't know what it is, then you leave that up for discretion, right? You must set very clear written expectations and guidelines when your employees know what's expected of them, and you will eliminate the gray area and they'll be happier. People want to know what you want from them, right? Statistics show that people want to please their boss. They want to please their leader, especially if you have a good leader. But if they don't know how, then they're just kind of wandering in the dark, right? And they might be thinking that they're doing a good job, but how do they know if they're doing a good job? You have to set up that expectation for them, right? Every rep should have a 3-ring binder on their desk that the BDC manager puts together for them. It should have every policy, every process, every pay plan, all of the product knowledge that you want them to know, any memos that you want them to know, any scripts or word tracks. It should have everything in there so that they have it all in one place and it's very clear. And when they break the rules, there's no, I didn't know, right? You know what the expectations are. You know what the policy is. It's very clearly lined out. It's here in your binder. I went over it with you when you were hired, right? There's no surprises. And because we're talking about profit, we need to discuss appointment guidelines and commissions that are awarded, because I see this being a huge problem right now in BDCs everywhere. And this is why it is so important that you have a BDC manager that is just stellar, because they need to protect you and they need to protect your money, right? Because the way that they manage that staff and the way they allow that staff to get paid, you can lose a lot of money. It will leak like a sieve. So most BDCs are paying their staff a base, right? And then they're paying them some type of commission, either on an appointment or a show or a sold or some combination of that, right? It's extremely important that you have a clear guideline as to what counts as an appointment and how they gain a commission on a client. And that might sound crazy. I need to explain to them what an appointment is? Well, if any of you guys are running a BDC in here, you know what you get. Oh, I've been calling that guy for 6 months and then he just walked in. He obviously came in because I called him. Yeah, man, you were working on that for a long time. I'm going to pay you an appointment on that. Right? Oh, I talked to that guy 3 days ago and he said he might come in on the weekends, but I didn't have a solid appointment and then he showed up on Monday. Yeah, you did a lot of work on that. I'm going to give you a commission, right? That's going to count as an appointment and as a show. Those aren't appointments and shows, right? So you guys have to make this decision for yourself, but make it very clear to your rep what it is. I can tell you that in my stores, an appointment is, we do not pay a rep a commission unless there is an appointment scheduled in the CRM in a certain format, right? And that format is, this customer has an appointment on Saturday at 9 a.m. We'll ask for Eric Gale on the E350. If it is not in that format, I'm not a happy camper. I'll let you get away with it once. If you're very new, maybe twice. But after that, it's not that hard. There needs to be a date and a time. That's what an appointment is. It's a date and a time. It's not a date. It's not a couple days. Oh, they're going to come in between Friday and Monday. That's not an appointment, right? It's great that you got them to at least go to that, but we need to take it to the next level. So it needs to have an appointment in the CRM in a specific format so that it's easy for me to look at and know exactly what that needs. When I'm looking through reviewing, I can have a clear, easy way to review that and to verify for commissions. And it needs to be put in the CRM before the person comes in. Imagine that, right? But I've seen it all. You need to find out if there's going to be a grace period. Will you allow a grace period? If somebody sets up an appointment legitimately on a Friday at 11 a.m. and they don't show up, but then they come in on Saturday, should they get credit for that? Should they get paid a commission on that? You know, it's tough. It's a tough decision to make, and I want to take care of my people, but I also want to protect the store. So what I would do is I would allow a 2-day grace period if you were off. You could have a 2-day grace period on, you could have a 2-day grace period on any appointment that was set that I would pay you a commission on. However, if you were off, you got a freebie. If you were not off, there better be notes in the system showing that you called that person for their no-show and tried to reschedule them multiple times. If they didn't show up and you never reached back out to them about them not showing up and then they came in, I'm sorry, we don't pay for that, no. Right? It's very difficult. I don't know why we as an industry have made this shift in the BDC, but you have to think about it this way. We don't pay salespeople to test drive cars or to demo cars, right? We've all seen the guy who took the guy out on 3 demos, spent 4 hours with him, and customer walked, right? Or they had bad credit and we couldn't approve them and we didn't find out soon enough. Did we pay that guy a sympathy? Oh, you did such a good job. I'm just going to pay you the commission on that car anyways. We don't do that. We don't do that with our sales staff. So why do we do it with our BDC staff? Your BDC gets paid a base pay, whether that's a salary or whether it's an hourly. They get paid a base pay for all of the things that are not shown appointments, right? They get paid to leave messages, have people not show up, send out emails with no result. They're already getting paid an hourly. A commission is a reward for a very specific action that you get the customer to take. Okay? So I would really encourage you that if you're doing that in your stores right now, you are increasing what you're paying in that department, but you're not actually getting anything from it. You're not actually bringing in more sales or bringing in more revenue. You're just spewing your net out the back, right? So we need to set up that expectation. Yes?
What does your pay plan look like?
So actually, the next couple of slides, I'm going to go through pay plans. Yeah. Go ahead.
What about putting a grace period on appointments set to the customer show? I have that sometimes. They're really close to when they set it to when they come.
So I give them a 2-day grace period.
When you're saying after the fact, I mean, they called in and the customer showed up 15 minutes later.
So in all of my appointment guidelines, I do say by manager discretion, right? So I make my guidelines really super clear and very tight. And then I say any exceptions will be made on manager discretion. But that's where you have to really trust your BDC manager, that they are worried more about protecting the store than they are about protecting themselves, because that can start to become an issue, right? If you're paying them on shows and they're increasing the shows, based on all of this kind of gray area, right? That's a problem. You need to have somebody who is afraid that one day you're going to come into their office and say, why'd you pay this person? Right? And I would encourage you, until you have a really vetted, long-term, great relationship with your BDC manager and you really trust them, I would encourage you to go through some of your appointments and say, what, did we pay him on this? Why did we pay this out? And let them explain it to you. Because I can tell you, in my department, I had the utmost integrity and I always was trying to protect the store, but I never wanted my general manager to come into my department and ask me if I paid somebody and why I paid them and me not have a good answer on it. Now, he trusted me to make the right decisions, and sometimes I would give them a spiff. I kept those numbers out of my numbers, though. I kept them out of my personal numbers, and I also kept them out of the numbers for the store. So I wouldn't say we had 50 appointments, right? When 10 of those were, I paid them, but they weren't really appointments, right? So I would write them a separate voucher that would have the customer's name on it, but I wouldn't enter it into my CRM after the fact to screw with my appointment set percentages, right? Okay, good. So we only have a little bit of time, but there's 2 different pay plans that I'm going to show you guys, okay? So one of the things I really want you to think about, and I don't know how many people are actually measuring this right now. I go into a lot of stores where they're not, and it's kind of concerning, but what's your cost per copy? Is there anybody who doesn't know what I mean by cost per copy? Okay. Yeah? Okay. So cost per copy, what I mean is how much that you pay out in BDC commission to how many units are sold. Okay? So sometimes I go into BDCs and I see that their cost per copy is $2,300, right? Because they're underperforming, but we're paying them a base that's high, then plus we're paying them commission, and they're maybe bringing in 6 sales, and all of a sudden we're paying your salesperson's making a $125 mini, and the BDC person is basically getting paid $2,300 a car. You have to look at it that way, right? If your cost per copy is all out of whack, then you might as well just shut down your BDC department and put all that money to your net. Let's not kid ourselves here. We want to sell units, but don't we want to make money more? Right? I can tell you that if you're a general manager, you care about the net, right? If you're a DP, you care about the net. If you're a BDC manager, your general manager's probably never talked to you about it, and so you don't even understand it, and you're not thinking it that way. And so if you are a general manager in this room right now, or if you are a dealer principal, you need to be talking to your BDC managers about this stuff. They need to understand how much money is going out versus how much money is coming in that their department is generating so that they can manage that. Because otherwise, it's on you, right? You can't expect them to manage something that they have probably never had any experience with. So when we talk about cost per copy, this is kind of like baby one. This is like baby pay plan. I like the other one better, but this works better if you have an underperforming BDC. Because this one, you can control your cost per copy 100%. Okay? What I'm doing here is I'm looking at what is the total compensation, and all of these numbers can be adjusted, right? This needs to be adjusted for your store, what you guys make gross per average, what you want to pay out in your compensation, right? These are just numbers, but it's more about the structure than it is about the number. So your total compensation per unit, if it's going to be $450 and I'm going to pay $300 to my salesperson, that's my average that I pay a salesperson on a car, and I'm going to add another $150 to that, and I'm going to get to $450 for a BDC. Then I'm going to look at how many total units did my BDC sell, and that's the compensation pool, okay? So at 150 times the 100 units, I got $15,000 to pay out to the 4 reps that I have. Okay? Then this is percentage of shown appointments. So depending on how many appointments they totally brought into the store, all the shows that the BDC brought into the store, what was my personal percentage that I brought in, right? What was my contribution as a rep? If I brought in 34%, well, I'm going to get $5,100, and that includes my hourly. That's not a commission. So that's going to include my hourly, or it's going to include my base. If I'm associate number 2 and I did 25%, I'm going to get $3,750, right? So you can see how if I'm underperforming, I'm not going to get much of the pie, right? So this is how you can control your cost per copy. If they don't make more than their base, well, then it can be a draw. And obviously, I don't work in every single state, so you have to make sure that you're compliant, talk to your HR person. But I would tell you that if they're not making more than their base, they shouldn't be working for you for very much longer. But love them into it, right? Make sure that you're training them into it. Don't just shoot them, But you need to control this stuff. So the other pay plan is more of a stair step. And the reason that I like this a little bit more is because as the production gets better, the cost per copy actually goes down. So with the other one, you have to decide on a CPC and you're there. It's good because it's not variable. You know where it's going to be. But when you start getting a really good BDC and they're high performers and they're just like kick-ass, this is going to actually decrease. The same production can be $100, right? So you can start to get that down as you have people who go up. Now, I live in Orange County. It's a very expensive area. People make a lot of money there, right? Because the cost per living is really high. So BDC agents get paid a lot. So this is just a sample. You know, adjust these amounts, whether it's your hourly or even any of these stair-step amounts, to fit your desired, one, cost per copy based on the production that you've done over the last 6 months on average, and then also based on your income goal for the production that you need out of the individual. Okay? But on this one, we're paying for appointments shown in a tier level, so the more appointments that you get, the more shows that you get, rather, the more that you get paid per show, and it's retro back to the first of the month, right? We give a quality bonus here, 75% for shown. If you're at 75% shown appointments, you're going to get a bonus. If you're at 45% sold, you're going to get a bonus, right? And then we do a volume bonus. If you bring in 60, 80, 100, or 150 shows to me, I'm going to give you some money. There are some caveats to these pay plans. Things like, if you don't hit my minimum call production, you lose some of your bonus. Okay? If you call out and you don't have an excuse, or if you're consistently tardy, I give one unexcused absence or tardy a month. If you exceed that, you miss some of your bonuses. Decide what your standards are and then apply them to that. But make sure that the people are up at their level. Okay? So I think I went over about a minute and a half. So I appreciate all your guys' time. I'm happy to take questions. I don't think there's anybody else in this room, so if you guys do have questions, I'm happy to stay a little bit longer. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. And here's my contact information. If any of you guys want to contact me, feel free. Go ahead. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the month, when we're going through payroll, we go through payroll together. So I will put together all of the payroll. I'll go sit in his office. I'll explain to him each rep what they're getting paid, how many units they sold. Here was my cost per copy for the average store for each rep. And what I'm tracking that I think we're going to do next month. We'll set up goals for next month. I align my goals with what the store's goals are, and then talk to my reps about what their production needs to be part of the team to help our team get to the place. But yeah, absolutely. I just go through the cost per copy with them and go through all of what we paid out. How many appointments did we set? How many leads did we get? How many appointments did we set? How many shows happened? How many solds happened? And then I also break it down by a department. So, because the BDC that I ran was pretty large, and we didn't just do internet, right? So we had internet sales, we had inbound phone calls, we did unsold showroom traffic, we had lease retention. I worked at a dual Mercedes-Benz store that had an 85% leasing, so we did a lot of lease retention. And I would break it down for him as far as our production for each department, and then as well as what were we compensating versus how much did we make. And I looked at our average gross profit as well. I had access to look at what did we make on those cars, so that I can know is the department actually profitable or not, right? Are we in our CPC range, but then also how much revenue are we actually generating as a department? And as a BDC manager, that's what I want to do, right? I want to talk to the GM and explain to him how much money I made him, because what's that? Job security. It's job security, right? It's when I want to ask for a raise and I'm like, hey buddy, I made you this much money. You can give me like this much of it, right? Go ahead. As far as, so it's really about how many sales that they're making, right? So if you're in a broken department right now where you have somebody who's bringing in 10 sold deals to you, that's not a BDC person, right? If I have a salesperson who can bring me 10 deals every month and he's, washing cars and doing all of that, then you just making phone calls should be able to bring in a lot more to me. So at 10 and what I'm paying you, that's what I consider underperforming. I'm looking at units and gross. That's it. Granted, that comes from how many appointments did you set and how many came in. And there can be an argument that I brought in a lot of shows and they didn't sell. And yes, as a management team, not just me, but my general manager and my sales managers, we need to look at if that's a broken process in the store, right? Is the floor the broken process, or did I say some things on the phone that led to them not buying a car, right? And if you have a BDC person who's maybe saying some things that they shouldn't be, you should probably already know that before the end of the month. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you want to take the next step in terms of this? Maybe obviously we're in a different place where we're at. But right now, I'm trying to get these management practices into place and start hiring people and doing all of that. But right now, I am our call center and making all the calls and doing all that. So how do you kind of make enough time and kind of move forward the next steps while having to be the person doing everything?
Well, I'm happy to help you, because I think that's a bigger answer than, and there's some variables there, but you need to have the support of your dealer, right? Support of the managers and stuff to start to take that to the next level. But make sure that you take down my information. If you email me, we can talk, and I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to talk to you every day if you need to. Oh, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
You said that you only use your website. You got rid of third-party providers. Is that correct?
We did.
Okay. What percentage would you say is a good percentage of appointments to number of leads from your website? If you could set a goal,
Right. Well, so for us, it's a little bit different, and I'm only going to say that, and now and I think the session's over, so I can plug a little bit, right? But, we have the company that I actually work for, ZMOT Automotive, we target only max in-market buyers. And what I mean by that is there's a funnel, right? And at the funnel, you have people who are in that stimulus phase. They're probably about 2 to 3 months out. Then you have people who are a little bit lower in the funnel than they're in the consideration phase, right? And they're going to be maybe 30 days out. And then you have people who are in that 0 moment retail phase, right? Those people are buyers. They're there between 6 to 10 days. They're going to make a decision. So what we do is we only target the consumers in the 0 moment. And so our percentage of appointments that we set off of the buyers that come into us is much higher, because when you're looking at somebody who's 3 months out and they're considering your make and 4 other ones, and maybe they're not even sure, you're not going to be able to get a hold of them as often, and the likelihood that they're ready to come in for an appointment and a demo drive is much lower. So for us, our truth is that on our buyers that are sent to us from ZMOT, it's 75%. It needs to be 75% appointment set off of our opportunities. But I would tell you that if you're taking a lot of third party, or if you're taking a lot of customers that are further out, it's going to be much lower than that. I think a really good BDC can maybe hit 48%. Yeah. All right, guys, any other questions? Yeah.
With your training procedures, you went through this, what was your average tenure?
I'm sorry, what'd you say? Oh, for my BDC people? If they didn't wash out in the first 90 days, then they were always with me until we moved them into sales. We had a lot of people go into sales after they worked with me, especially into internet sales. BDC people make the best internet people, right? Because they know how to make the calls. They're not afraid of getting on the phone. So, my retention was very high because I really invested in the employees and did training with them all the time. And I was intimately involved and did management with them. We had a really strong bond. And so I would say, except for some people who got poached away from me every once in a while to be BDC managers at other places, people who I had to fire or just flat out quit, maybe 10%. Yeah, maybe 10%.
What percentage of your BDCs
that went on to ours. I probably had about 10 people that came from my BDC and then ended up going into sales. So.
Did you maintain any profitability off of those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have people, they get into the BDC, they're not even, I mean, just like a lot of us, we probably didn't grow up saying I'm going to be in the car business, right? So you get these people who are looking for an opportunity, they get into the BDC, and then they want to do something more. And if you can get them into your internet department and teach them, and you should be cross-training your BDC people anyways because they appreciate it, doing walkarounds and things like that. But I would move them into the internet department, and since I was the director of that department, I would spend time with them, training them on how to be a good internet person, showing them how to desk. But it was really like once the hand was raised and during the reviews when we had that conversation, they would remain in the BDC for a year. But over that year, that was the commitment that I made to them, stay in for a year, but over that year, once a week, you and I are going to take clients. You're going to shadow me. I'm going to go out with you on demo drives. I'm going to show you how to desk a deal. I'm going to show you how to work a deal. Right? I'm going to show you how to trade appraisal. And once a week for a year. And then if you still want to do it, then we'll find a spot for you. Because usually I usually had to find a place for them in the internet department, right? It's not just like, just throw them in there. But I had a lot of internet people that I moved to what I would call a super sales team. Because you would notice that as your internet people got better and better, actually their closing percentage would go down, which sounds counterintuitive, but what would happen is that they started selling more repeat and referral, and they were generating their own business, and they're selling less internet leads, but they're getting the same amount of internet leads, right? So I would move them onto what I call the super sales team. They would get a special pay plan, and they would be able to make their own schedule. But they didn't get any opportunities. Sometimes I'd give them some orphans, but it was all repeat, referral, generate your own business, right? And then I would get openings in my internet department that I could fill in with the BDC. And the beauty of it is that I managed all of those departments, so I could literally grab somebody who never had any experience and train them exactly the way I want them to be trained. Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah.
I was going to ask about the management of the BDC.
Manager.
And that pay plan, what does that look like?
So, if they're just doing BDC, I would mirror them very similarly to whatever the structure is that you have for your BDC agents, but in smaller increments, right? So that second plan that you saw up there, if you cut those numbers like down to, it's like $2, $5, right? But if you have a bigger department and they're bringing in a lot, then it starts to be more, and you need to pay them a bigger base, right? Yeah. But if you want, we can talk about what your department looks like now and where you kind of want them to be at from a cost perspective, and I can help you put something together. Yeah, absolutely. All right, yeah. Sure.
Let's say one of the customers, and you say they're ready to buy. They've been speaking to someone on BDC. They nailed it down. They're going to come in at a certain day and time.
Mm-hmm.
What's the optimal? I know you probably have a certain process. Every dealership does it a little different. BDC, internet, salespeople, finance. What would you say is the optimal track to get them into the dealership?
Like a confirmation process?
Kind of, but in the car leaving. Like
Okay.
what positions did they speak to before they drove off with their new car?
Sure. So, how many different people did they speak to?
How many different
Okay. So one of the benefits of having your BDC work with your sales department is that nobody ever comes in thinking they're meeting with the BDC agent, right? Because we're just right up front about it. I'm the executive assistant. You're going to be meeting with my sales manager. His or her name is Natalie Godoy, right? And she's so great, and these are all the reasons that they're so great, and they're going to push them up, right? When they come in, they're going to ask specifically for that person. If they don't have a salesperson assigned to them because it's a new, fresh phone opportunity, set that up with your manager. Whichever manager is going to be on duty when that person's coming in, set them up to ask for that sales manager, the floor manager, right? So that he can greet them, make sure that they're sent to the right salesperson, right? Get them in touch with somebody, but they're going to pretty much talk to a BDC person. probably a sales manager, whether it's at the beginning or during the close, and an internet salesperson or a regular salesperson, and then they're going to sign their paperwork with the finance department. Okay. Does that answer your question? But to make sure that you're getting a higher percentage of people who are buying, one thing that we use is we do VIP appointment confirmations that are outstanding. So we will do a live transfer to a manager. Now it could be your sales manager or your BDC manager, whatever is more available, but we do a live transfer, and that manager does a VIP appointment confirmation where they offer them a specialty drink. And they tell them, we're so excited to have you coming in to take purchase of your new E350. And I just want to make sure this is going to be an outstanding experience for you. Is there anything I could get you to drink? Maybe a coffee, a Jamba Juice, something off-site, right? Because that's like a wow. If you're like, I'm going to give you a water from the back, it's not as big of a deal, right? So that's going to do two things for you. One, it's a very good experience. And if you got to see Eric Gill's keynote this morning, I'm sure he talked about experiences and having an experiential versus a transactional business, right? So it's a wow moment for them. But the other thing is, what's the likelihood that they're going to leave you hanging when they know that you went and got their extra soy, foam, vanilla, latte, and it's getting cold and it's sitting on your desk, right? So if they're gonna miss it, they're gonna call you, right? So you're gonna get a lot more people to show. Then when they show, hey, here's your coffee. Oh, wow, they did what they said they were gonna do. I didn't expect it, right? Because they're expecting they're not going to have the coffee ready, right? So, wow, you did what you said you were going to do. You have the car out front. It's looking all nice, right? So if you know you have an appointment, they're coming on a specific car, you should have that car pulled up, washed, ready to be looked at, right? So giving them that better experience, that's what sells cars.
In my dealership, is there a fine line, or is there kind of a gray area between BDC representative and internet salesperson?
Okay.
Or is there
I believe you should have a completely separate line. Yeah. So start with internet salespeople first. So right now, if you're kind of two feet in, start with internet salespeople first. And then when they get maxed out and they can't do any more on their own because they're making all the calls and they're selling 20 cars a month and they're scrambling around and they're like, I can't get to everybody because I'm just too busy, that's when you start to add BDC people. And then those are two separate people. Your BDC people are strictly just on the phone. They're not meeting customers. They're not test driving cars. They're not demoing. They're not delivering, right? That's the other thing. And I didn't put it in the presentation because I didn't have enough slides, but I didn't have enough time. But don't make your BDC people run lunch and wash cars and be like the general overall porter assistant for your sales staff. They're there to be professional phone salespeople. They're inside salespeople. They're setting appointments for your store. That's where they're going to bring you the most revenue. You don't want to have an overpriced porter, right? If you need an assistant, just hire an assistant, right? Or do it yourself. I hate when sales managers are like, oh, send one of your BDC people to go get me lunch. I'm like, go get yourself lunch and actually bring it back for the rest of the staff. Because those people are working hard, right? And you're sitting there waiting for the up bus to come, right? Smoking your cigarettes. And I'm a smoker, so that's okay, but I'm just saying, don't send the hardworking people to go get the lunch. Yeah.
Would you say that a dealership needs, let's say there's plenty of work to do. Would that dealership need sales, internet, and BDC, or is there, a bill that would only require sales and BDC?
There's not a finite answer because it's going to depend on your market and what your opportunities are, right? We have some smaller stores in our group that there's just not enough walk-in traffic, right? I like to have a dedicated internet department, but sometimes, we are restricted on our staff, and we do have some smaller stores that maybe only have, 5 salespeople, right? That are newer stores or they're just in a rural area. And in that sense, a BDC maybe isn't really, I'd maybe add more salespeople and segment departments before I'd add a BDC. So it's hard to say based on the market.
Small store.
Yeah.
Would you only have sales staff that handles internet, or would you have internet and
So
sales and regular sales?
At first, I would start it out that why don't we allow if you don't have enough walk-in traffic, right? If it's very small, very rural area, or you just don't have enough opportunities, let everybody take the internet leads at first. But if they don't hit your standards, they lose the privilege, right? All right. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.